This is the Dynamics 365 podcast, focusing on the ingredients of a successful Dynamics 365 practice. Your host is Business Solution MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as NZ365 Guy. Over the coming weeks, I'll be interviewing seasoned professionals from various parts of the world, talking about what it takes to be successful in a Dynamics 365 practice. For more information on this interview, show notes, feedback, and resources mentioned, or to suggest a guest for future episodes, please go to nz365guy.com/podcast. Thanks to Inorgic for sponsoring the Dynamics 365 Practice podcast. Inorgic is a leading Microsoft Gold Dynamics CRM ISV, delivering best-in-class Dynamics 365 customer engagement solutions, as well as cost-effective and high-quality offshore Dynamics CRM programming services. Inorgic innovative solution portfolio includes Maplytics, a premier map visualization, routing, and geoanalytics app for Dynamics CRM customer engagement. InnoLink, that offers a seamless integration between QuickBooks and Dynamics 365 customer engagement, and other productivity apps like User Adoption Monitor, Click to Clone, and Click to Export. Hi everyone, I'm here with Gretchen Opferkew, and in this episode we're going to be focusing on adoption in the Dynamics 365 practice. After hundreds of CRM implementations, she has seen it all: success, failure, success that turns into failure over time, and of course lasting change that brings your results and growth. Whether it's strategy, process, solution design, governance, or change management, her value is to bring ideas, create strategies, execute plans. This is how she helps organizations get transformation done and get results. Hi Gretchen, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Mark. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, as you know, there's been a lot of questions come in, so we've got a full schedule today. But last time I interviewed Gretchen was 3 years ago. I was actually on video when I was doing some vlogging back at a conference we were at. Tell us about your Dynamics 365 journey over the past years and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, well, I started as a consultant and managed a group of consultants for a large partner. And then I actually had started a change management and training team, which is, I think, where you caught me in that interview, and started growing my expertise in what makes implementation successful. And so I've recently, in the past 5 months, just joined Microsoft as a customer success manager. Very fitting title for someone who's passionate about adoption. And so I help organizations get their Dynamics 365 to meet their business goals, really. I call myself an adoption Sherpa.
An adoption Sherpa. Excellent. Yes. Excellent. Okay, so in this episode, we're going to focus, of course, on your expertise in adoption. And one of the questions we had from Melissa Farris, he asked, what is it and what's it all about?
Well, a lot of people kind of disregard the concept of adoption because they think, it is only talking about whether someone will use the application or not. But when we're talking about Dynamics 365 customer engagement, where we might be talking about whether employees are using the application, the quantity of employees who are using the application, but we might also be talking about the quality of the use of the application. So we might be looking at whether they are actually using it in the intended way. And ultimately, the way to measure adoption, or the goal of adoption, is that you're getting the business results that you wanted to get from the application. So delivering on the promise of Dynamics 365 is what adoption really is.
So what's the role of formal adoption methodologies? Like, I'm familiar with Prosci, there might be others out there. What's your experience with these?
I do like Prosci. So I did evaluate a bunch of change management methodologies as I was starting this journey. And one of the best things about Prosci is that it's very aligned with a deployment mindset. So I'm deploying a change or bringing a big change into the organization, whereas other methodologies can be aligned more around culture change or, mergers and acquisitions or that sort of thing. But this Prosci and the methodology is called ADKAR. That is, I think, one of the best, if not the best, methodologies that really aligns with dynamics.
Okay, and so are there formal training programs around Prosci or are there other programs that you're familiar with as well?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, I think Prosci live training is only offered in the US. I have not seen any global offerings of the Prosci training, but you definitely can pick up the book. The ADKAR book is a good. It's a good read for anybody that has been doing implementations for any amount of time. You'll pick up the book and you'll be like, yes, yes, okay, this is what has gone wrong.
So at a high level, what is ADKAR at a high level?
ADKAR stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And for most people, they will understand ADKAR in the context of if you've ever done a training with a group of people and your participants are upset or angry that this is happening to them, or that you're telling them that their job is going to change or the software doesn't do what they want. It's because you're trying to deliver the knowledge, before they've had the opportunity to be aware of what's happening or to build a desire for what's happening. So that best practice is actually not to try to deliver those all at once. Today, class, you're getting a new CRM and your job is going to change. And these are the benefits. That's the desire part. And now we're going to talk about knowledge, how you do it. It's like you can't do that all at once. You have to give people a runway, and some people need a longer runway than others, just dependent on their personality.
Why is adoption still such a common problem or complaint with CRM? Why is there so much resistance in a lot of projects, do you think?
I think one of the underlying things is the focus on the system itself and focusing just on, we are going to get a system. We need a system to track things, and we're going to roll this out and cause everybody to track their work. I think that's still the overarching mindset that people have when it comes to CRM. And so it's that system focus, that IT focus that sets everything out on the wrong foot. So CRM should be really a business tool to get business results, and it should be led by the business. And you've heard the term, never trust a skinny cook. And that's all about, if IT is cooking up your CRM, but they never intend to eat it themselves, they're just mixing the stew for the business. What are the chances that it's going to taste good for the business? So the business needs to lead it. They need to say what ingredients they need to get to where they're going to go. And IT would be the execution in many cases.
Often find, though, that definitely it's an IT-led strategy rather than business and creates those problems. So a question we had from Janet was, what is the cost to do a project, or what is the cost to a project when user adoption fails?
Yeah, and Prosci has actually done a lot of statistics on that, a lot of measurement of the cost of a failed project. Statistics on failure are very high, 50% in some studies that I've looked at, up to 85%. And it seems to be that organizations are just getting used to that cost. They're just switching technology every 2 years, making the same mistakes over and over again, and they're just getting used to the high cost of it. Whereas if I were a business leader, a CEO, I would say, actually, I don't want this to be one of the big costs of my organization. So, what is the actual cost? How much does your program cost? How much does your implementation cost because you're redoing it every couple of years?
So what do you do when you come across a client that just says, we can't afford the change management process piece on the project? How would you handle a question like that?
Yeah, you can't afford not to do it. And I have come across that mentality, and I do have a sense of, you know, you can lead a horse to water. There's a huge volume of statistics saying that this is a best practice, that this is a necessary step to success. And if you feel that you can do it without that, then we'll be talking to you in a couple of years.
So what are the common mistakes and pitfalls to avoid when it comes to implementing the technology and to really get that adoption right?
Well, I mentioned that focus on the technology, and there's a few things that I would say if I had a dime for every time I heard this. um, One of them is the focus on tell me what the technology can do, and that's what we will do as a business. Tell me what the process that CRM has in it, and let me think about whether I want to use that process. So it's basically like saying, what we're going to a car dealership and saying, where does this car usually drive? Because I would like to decide on whether I want this car based on where it usually goes. And it's like, well, you're the one who's going to drive the car. Do you understand that? You're driving it in a direction. So you have to decide where your business is going and what results you want from this tool. And I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls is just implementing it for the technology's sake. And I think some businesses and business leaders can actually create a smoke screen and say, the reason why we aren't getting success or the reason we are going to get success is we're going to implement this technology. So their mindset is the technology is going to bring me success rather than I'm going to deliver success using this technology. Some of the other pitfalls are just making it too complicated. I've seen organizations try to implement like a very detailed process, spitting out, forms and all of this detailed stuff as if they're like some sort of government organization. They create huge form and CRM that nobody's ever going to fill out. Simplify, simplify, simplify. You cannot ask your employees to do too much, or you will fail.
Interesting. So what about the situation with adoption where staff are forced to use a system? So let's say in a call center or a retail environment where there's no opt-out. Opt-out is not an option. They're forced to use it. What's your guidance in that type of scenario?
Yeah. Well, with that, we aren't necessarily focused on adoption. They're going to use it or they're probably not going to have a job, right? We are focused on things like continuation of business. If you're going live with a huge call center or a huge retail team, continuity of business and making sure that the customer doesn't know you're going live with a new system. Emphasizing on bringing people to proficiency, making sure that the system is intuitive. So doing a lot of testing around usability. All of those things are a huge focus for change management and adoption when you have people who don't have a choice. And also, employee experience, making sure that it's simple and fun for them is important. And ultimately, I keep emphasizing that we'll be measuring business results. We have to be ready to measure whether the customer experience or the operational savings that you're aiming to achieve with Dynamics is happening. Are you achieving it?
Yeah. So what should IT or consulting do differently during implementation to help with adoption?
Well, there's some technical things they can do, like helping guide the business to keep it simple, pushing back on the business if they're asking for complicate things and just be honest and say nobody's going to fill that out. Good data is something that IT really knows how to do, and they need to bring that to the table. But one of the things that I think is flawed is some of the requirements gathering methodologies that we have, the way that In many cases, we are sitting in a conference room with business users and we're kind of taking an order. Um, I recommend trying to get around that by also doing some ride alongs or side by sides. Some people call them day in the life, where you actually go to where the people are working and you watch them and you build a tool to do that process, or if it's a future state process, build the tool for their day in the life. Um, and I always think about how often, you go to restaurants and you make an order. How often is that order what you actually wanted? When you get probably 50% of the time. So that's probably what your success rate is if you're going to bring people into your conference room and just take an order. And then IT is really responsible for setting up this project schedule. And I I can't tell you how many arbitrary go live dates with very little testing I've seen in my life. So testing in a live environment, testing in a day in life scenario. So there's things that IT can really do to help adoption and help make implementation successful.
So is change something that happens just at the end, or is it all the way through the process to make sure the adoption's there?
Yeah, it's all the way through the process. I mean, when you're creating a change management plan, it's typically either at the before the implementation starts, like before development and requirements gathering starts, or at the beginning. If you're doing it at the beginning of the implementation, typically you're a little bit behind the eight ball, and you'll find that you're having trouble because you have to bring in key stakeholders, but those stakeholders don't even know what's going on. They don't know why you're bringing them in. So then you get like this catch-22 of like, I'm going to quickly explain what we're doing, and then I'm going to ask for your help, and then later I'm going to really tell you what we did. So ideally, you would be doing change management would be, way at the beginning. You would be laying out a communication plan for how you're going to bring in stakeholders and what you're going to tell them about what you're doing, and then other groups of people, such as the employees or the end users, they don't maybe need to know until a few months out, what's happening. But it's making a plan early on for sure.
So what's your recommendation around getting those employees involved, the people who are going to actually use the system day in, day out, getting them involved even in the design process or even the architecture process of the new implementation? Do you recommend to get them involved in that entire journey, or is it something that, you just said a few months out as an example? How do you get that buy-in and ownership for the entire solution that's coming?
Well, certainly if you're doing side-by-sides or ride-alongs, you're going to be doing that with employees. So that's one way to get them involved. A lot of organizations will bring in those employees as stakeholders and get their opinions. I really like the one-to-many for employees. So if you're on one location, you can do things like whiteboard in the department to say, what features or functions or what are you hoping to get from this? Or doing a survey and asking people. I like those one-to-many because it does give everybody a stake in the process. So if they feel like they've been asked, they feel like they've been included, they're going to buy in a lot earlier. If you're rolling out to 5,000 people, you're going to have a really hard time with that. So you have to really strategically think almost like a marketing campaign. How do we not only just communicate to these people, but how do we engage them and in a bi-directional communication? And that might be through webinars or social network or however, surveys, however you're planning to do that. All of those are good ideas.
So we had a question here from Ian, and he asks, what is best for adoption, a carrot or a stick?
I actually hate those terms, carrot and a stick, because I always ask myself, I'm like, do I come to work every day for a carrot or a stick? Probably not, but I can understand that when you're talking about something I don't want to do, that you might be able to incent me with a carrot or a stick. I think that the biggest carrot for CRM implementations is help me do my job better. Give me something valuable, give me something that I didn't have before, some insights. And I totally understand productivity tool, you know, if you use the tool well, you will sell better or service customers better, whatever. But there's got to be some candy in there too to really give me something that I can't get anywhere else or something that I don't know. So that's my carrot. I mean, some organizations go so far as to like, you don't get your commission unless you um, use CRM, or part of your bonus structure is based on use. And that's certainly, I guess, an official carrot, or stick, whichever way you look at it. Accountability is a good stick. I have this now. I have to fill out some basic, what I consider busy work. Um, that we have to do for our role so that what we're doing gets rolled up to our manager and to the manager's manager and all of that. So, and it's minimal, but the best way is for my manager to check in, and it all rolls up to a dashboard so our whole team can see it, and that all rolls up to a dashboard. So that accountability of, I don't want to be the person on the dashboard with zeros next to my name, or, you know, that's enough of a stick for me.
So, what's some of bad advice that you've heard around adoption?
I hear a lot of misgivings about adoption. I hear things like leaders need to use CRM, and that might be the case. It might be that, a certain level of leader needs to be in CRM. In many cases, the leaders may not be in CRM every day, but what's more important is that they actually use the data from CRM. So that they value CRM, that they see it as a critical part of their picture of the business and how they drive the business. If you're just asking employees to put data in and it's just being thrown away, or tucked away for later, but it's not being used by leaders, then that's not good. So to say leaders have to use CRM, or sometimes I hear, we're going to make these high performing salespeople get in CRM. They're going to put in their contacts. And I'm like, this person makes $4 million a year. I'm like, maybe we could get an assistant for them to help them get their data in, So there's just what is the mindset that this person has to get in there and do this, because they have to adopt? It's like, well, we can figure out a way to get what we want from them. Let's get creative.
Anything else around that bad adoption type or bad advice in that adoption space?
I hear a lot. Another one that I would be a millionaire if I had a nickel for is, I hear, if they will do what they're told. I hear that a lot. Leaders like to say they will do what they're told. And I think leaders like to believe that they will do what they're told. But that's not good. That's not a good advice.
So what are some features in Dynamics 365 that can actually help drive adoption, that are actually in the product?
Well, I get excited about things that augment what I put in. So if I put in a basic piece of information and I have an inside view, or maybe something that goes out and brings in more information for me that's interesting to me, I think that's really good. How much time does it save the person of going out and researching and building this picture of a company or a person? In the case of social insights, where you're trying to build a picture of a person, the Microsoft relationship selling, and the LinkedIn integration, I think that's going out and getting information for me that would take me time. I really like tools that help me prioritize what I'm supposed to be working on. So some of the BI and things that we add into the application, and the integrations that we create with CRM that help me rate, color code, whatever it is, the people that I'm talking to, those are going to drive a lot of value. And I do like the marketing platform integration that Microsoft has built, and also there's some third-party add-ons that do some of the digital marketing automation that actually deliver insights into Dynamics. So as a salesperson or customer service, I can see whether it be sentiment or lead scores or some sort of um, really quick view at what's going on with my contact. All of those things I think drive adoption, help me do my job.
Yeah, I know. Click Dimensions does that really well. Does that really well? How it brings all the data through. A question we had here from Santosh. In a CRM rollout that includes channel partners like dealers, distributors, retailers, what are some of the best practice or gotchas around adoption and onboarding of such indirect employees?
Mm-hmm. That is tough. I actually work with a client right now in that case where the people who are using it are not employees. You have very little accountability over that group. So I think the biggest one would be the incentive. So if there's a relationship that they have with you where they need something from you and you only give them that, whether it be compensation or something like that, with um, their compliance to put in information or use the tool, that might work. I try to take the value road though and try to provide as much value as possible to that. So whatever it is that we can, and in many cases, this involves just having an envisioning session of just completely take the capability of the tool off the table. And let's talk about what would really make these people's lives easier, what would make their job better, what would make them more successful in their role, and can we deliver that? I think if you just brainstorm, sometimes you come up with really good ideas that are actually quite simple to implement. Some of them you're going to say, no, that's way out of scope. That would be $1 million. But for sure, you'll come up with some good ideas and try to deliver that value to the people to make it sticky for them.
So what happens when, like, I've been with customers in situations where, management have said, listen, we're just going to make all the fields compulsory and that'll force people to use it. What's your take on that?
That'll force people to not use it. Yeah, I mean...
Or put in dirty data.
Yeah, do you want junk data? Exactly. Yeah, we've all been there where we're like, we just want to put this in. We don't have that information right now, but now we're forced to put something there. And of course, we're just going to make a bunch, blah, blah, blah.
I had a question come in from Scott, and he said, what is broken with CRM? There are still many, many more users that dislike using the corporate mandated CRM than users that say they love CRM and can't live without it. He says adoption is fuzzy. Usage can be measured. What is the best usage metric that indicates true adoption? What is one thing that should be addressed with the product that could make it a love to use rather than forced to use product?
Well, what is the one measurement? I don't think there's one measurement for any organization, but with the organizational insights in Dynamics, you can look at usage, who's logging in daily, weekly, monthly. However, logging in is not really usage, and a lot of organizations end up doing something like record creates of different types of records for different roles and creating a dashboard to measure usage that way. Or even some qualitative, checks to just say, what's the quality of this or that? I've always wanted Microsoft to develop a platform tool that you could use that would say, wait, what's the percent complete of this record? So give it like 15 attributes and say, if these are filled out, we'll consider that 100% complete or something like that. Would be interesting, but I don't think there's just one feature that could drive adoption and love for all. But I do love the direction that we're going with artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is all about, telling me something that I don't know or doing something for me, and saving me time. So, you know, we're just becoming more and more of a illiterate, unfocused group of people who I'm pretty sure now if an email is more than 2 paragraphs, I can't read it. So so I'm all about, like, talking to my phone or talking to my watch and telling it to do something for me. So we're we're going there with CRM. I think we're gonna get to the point where very few people in the organization actually touch the keyboard and touch the application. But I would love to see that CRM is almost like a personification, similar to Cortana, and maybe Cortana would be the name, but there's personification where we're just saying, "Hey, CRM, remind me later to, call this person," or "I just got out of this meeting and here's my follow up." Um, and so I think that kind of thing would just um, make it a lot more valuable for people.
So I had a question here from Janet. She's saying, why is it important to have user adoption experts as part of an enterprise CRM project?
Well, I go back to that Sherpa thing, if you feel like you are, you're going to knock it out of the park without having people who have done this before help you along or to focus on adoption. One of the things that I've noticed over the years is that an IT department doing a project like this, they're almost 100% focused on the technology. And that adoption person, what they can do is they're looking at the same project, but they're just looking at it with a different lens. And they're focused on the employee who is going to receive this new technology and preparing them. So, the biggest analogy that just popped in my head is, parenting. You're focused on you're going to have a baby, and you do need someone focused on building that room out and getting the crib ready and all of that stuff. And you need someone focused on that so that when you have the baby, you have a place to put it. So I think that adoption expert is that person who's focused on the employee.
Do you find it's not really the role of the project manager to do that? It needs to be someone that just has that view of the world?
Yeah, it's a very special project manager who would be able to actually hold those two lenses in tension. And the larger the project, the more that person just doesn't have time. They just cannot put on that employee hat and look at that employee lens. So that's when, even though they might have the capability to do it, it doesn't mean that they have the time and attention to do that. So designating somebody else whose role it is to focus on adoption, to focus on the employee and getting the business ready for this change, that's a wise thing to do in a larger initiative.
I had another question come in here from Neil, and he gives a scenario here. If you're trying to implement Dynamics 365 into a team of field sales guys, and they see little benefit in the data they need to collect, as it is in quotes, just for the managers, so they see CRM as purely an admin overhead they don't want. What are the top product features you'd train to help change this opinion?
Well, this tip works for girls too, not just sales guys. No, it just goes back to, how valuable are the people. Everybody in the organization should be able to do like a baseline level of administrative tasks, minimizing what they do to, hopefully just a few fields. Just really, it shouldn't be that big of a laborious thing. But if it really truly is for them and they're extremely valuable, like I said, let's figure out how much the data is worth and what we can do. So a lot of organizations will have a sales operations person that is kind of an overflow, and I see people rolling their eyes and saying, oh, such and such a salesperson is always emailing sales operations and saying, can you put this in CRM or can you do this in CRM for me? And I'm like, yeah, they should be doing that. I don't know why we're pushing away from that. We should be supporting them with data entry. We should be supporting them with, um, you know, creating documents and things like that. And so let's create that. Let's create that avenue for them if they truly are on the street selling.
Yeah, I've noticed in my experiences, oftentimes forms can be made so complicated as well that to people in the field, they've got to weed through a lot of the stuff that's not relevant to them. And so I've found role-tailored forms to be very helpful in that scenario where the key things that need to be captured always at the top. There's minimal scrolling, gets to the point quickly and allows them to do the data capture they need to do and move on rather than figure out every time they hit a new form which bit they need to do.
Absolutely.
I have another question here. This one's from Andre, and his question is, how do you manage resistance? Are there any tips and tricks when there's clearly people that are outright resistant to the new technology coming in?
So if you're actually doing change management, and you are typically, as part of that, you are creating a stakeholder map. So you're actually probably going to see the resistance at the manager level or the leader level first. And that's tough because you do have to have some tough marital conversations. We're all doing this together. We've got to run a three-legged race and everybody needs to be on board. And I've worked with some larger organizations that's not a one meeting solution. It's not just here's what we're doing, here's where we're going, get on the bus. It's a repeated conversation and allowing each group to be heard and those kinds of things. That can be really complex. Usually when people are talking about resistance, they're talking about that situation in the training where you've got the person or the people who are upset or angry. And that resistance it's at that point too late to manage. Should have been managed. Early on, it should have been, communication coming through their managers about what we're doing, why we're doing this. They should have been engaged early. So typically, if you actually, I did get the Prosci certification training, and at that training, they said, we really don't focus too much on resistance. We focus on mitigating that. And if you do mitigate it, then you won't have a lot of resistance afterwards.
Here's a follow-up question there is around deciding the right training or methodologies to support smooth adoption. And just in that vein of thought around training, a lot of people say, okay, we're going to train, we're going to, do a week's training at the start of rollout. What about the employees that start 3, 6, 9 months later in that organization that hadn't been there for that training? What's your thoughts around the training, the methodology to support adoption?
Yeah. Yeah, I can really see, if you're rolling out to 25 people and then you have another person join, that's different than if you're rolling out to hundreds or thousands of people and then you have a turnover. Some organizations 65% turnover or 35%. So you need to build a training that's repeatable. And a lot of organizations are doing things like micro-learning where you've got short videos or e-learning. E-learning, of course, can be pretty baked. And if you're agile, if you're rolling out features all the time, your e-learning can get out of date really quickly. So short videos or short documents for training are really critical. And yeah, it's just mapping out the employees that you have and what they need to know and figuring out how to keep them updated. One of the things that many organizations don't do, which I try to recommend that they do, is to decentralize the training. So obviously you have somebody who is in charge of all the training and the content and everything like that. But you do have to have sort of a train the trainer network. So the best thing for me is if I start on a team or I start in an office, that someone in close proximity to me, either business wise, meaning they're on my team, um, or geographically close to me, like they're in my office, needs to be able to train me in the job functions. So provide those people tools, provide them training, and then allow them to train, and making that an official role such that if that person leaves the organization, we replace that trainer. That's a big deal. Is a lot of times it's an unofficial thing, and then we lose them.
He had one final question here is around tool sets to assist in delivering and managing change management. Would you say that ADCAR would be that, or Prosci would be the tool or methodology to best help get a organization up to speed and fluidly carry out adoption and change management?
Yep. I'm open to anybody who has another methodology that they really use. But that's the one that I found I really enjoy using.
Another question here from a listener, Neil, and his question is, for teams using an agile framework, or they have a slick DevOps process where they have the ability to release and update to production every week or even every day, how do we help users embrace daily changes to their Dynamics 365 apps?
Well, I think putting on the lens, putting on the employee hat, putting that lens on, I think we need to start with, what do we want the employee's experience to be? Do we want them to get an email every week with updates? Because how do we feel about that when our software is updating on our computer all the time? Or an app that we use all the time on our phone is constantly being updated. It adds to the stress and it feels difficult. So I would think that even if you're agile and you're rolling out new features, you might want to group those together, either by the target audience that makes it really relevant to them, or just in a time, whether it's once a month or quarterly, that we are emphasizing the new features and functions for people so that they don't experience that overload. I don't know about you, but some organizations send out a lot of communication. So that overload, it just can get lost in there.
Sean, he asks, what's better for user adoption overall? Implementing a known legacy process or providing effective organizational change management to introduce a new paradigm, assuming that the change is an improvement long term?
I say whatever's best for the business. So he said that, assume it's effective or it's a better change, then I would say that whatever the business needs to get the business results is what we're going to have to do, right? So I would not delay a business change just for a system rollout and say, oh, we're going to, just roll out the old process just to make it easier for the employees and delay the change that's going to really drive business results.
And one last question here that we have from the audience. It's from Rick, and he said CRM has many audiences it needs to serve. He says in his experience has shown that marketing and sales are rarely in alignment. How do you present the value proposition to each audience so they not only use the system but also play nice in the sandbox with each other?
Marriage counseling. No, I think that, CRM is really designed to bring teams together for a win-win. And so I do think that as part of the process, we need to talk about how those teams are going to work together. And I really like working with sales and marketing teams because I think that oftentimes CRM is the first thing that they're doing together, or that they are coming together and talking about. And I like the idea that if I'm a salesperson, marketing is doing stuff for me and I don't even have to do anything. Like, they are generating leads for me and they are, nurturing my contacts without me even having to think about it. That's a huge benefit. And then if they're giving me the outputs of that in terms of insights of which of my contacts are most digitally engaged, then that's great because I can wake up in the morning, I haven't done anything. I just go into CRM, I can see, oh my goodness, this and such contacts is really seems to be interested right now. And then with marketing, it's like, they depend on sales to justify their existence, right? They have to report on those metrics. So um, it can be tough to get sales to do what you want to do, want them to do. So that is tough. I actually try to encourage marketers to do more correlative reporting instead of always trying to tag and tie everything back to, this person attended this event, which grossed this sale, because it probably is 7 or 8 touches that, actually led to this sale. So they're going to also hang themselves trying to get all of the salespeople to tag and connect their opportunities.
So one final question before we just get into some quick fire questions is you're at the start of a project and you get brought into a conference room, for example, and you've got a range of employees in the room, and in some cases they're hearing for the first time that the software that they've spent the last 5 to 10 years using and know it like the back of their hand is going away, and it's going to be replaced by something totally different, visually different. The way they interact with it, often they might have come from a system that was totally keyboard driven. For example, you tab through the fields, the old green or black screen environments, often still exist, and they were very fast in how they navigated around the system. How do you address that first off explanation that it's not going to be easy to start with, but you're going on a journey, and it will be easier in the long run. But it's not going to be easy to start with. How do you address, or what are the points you would bring up with that room, that audience, to get their buy-in?
I would use that as an opportunity to engage them and get their voice in the room if you're in a physical location like that, because people don't like to be sold. They don't like to hear a bunch of empty promises. So I would definitely use that opportunity to hear, what do you not like about the existing system? If you could imagine a new system, what would you want to see? But it is also an opportunity to tie what you're doing to the overall organization and where it's going. I think that's always important. So you can zoom out and you can look at the long term and say, yes, this green screen is what we're used to, but in 10 years, are we going to be using this? We have to make a change, and maybe call out some of the organizational benefits that you're going to get from this. One of the things that people like to put in there right away is, here's what's in it for me. And that's one of the common, what are you going to get from this? Oftentimes it's a chicken and the egg, like you may not at that point really know what the employees are going to be getting from it. So it would just be giving them transparency to the process of, look, we will be working with each team or each of you to identify really the benefits that you're going to get from this, and don't say, oh, you're going to love this. It's got colorful dashboards and the integration without.
So just to wrap up, I've got a couple of quick fire questions for you. So first of all, what book do you recommend most to people and why?
So I'm very often working with sales teams. So I would say from a sales team perspective, Cracking the Sales Management Code is a good book. It helps sales managers really sort through all of the KPIs and all of the things you could possibly measure on your team and actually pull out from that the levers that they can actually push to get different results. So it really cuts through some of the mud there. So that's one that I actually have given out when I go to customers and just give it to their sales leader.
Excellent. And any books specifically around change
Yeah, I
management?
mentioned the ADKAR book. That's a good read. I read it for the first time after having done implementations for like 6 or 7 years. And it was like light bulbs. I didn't even know change management was the thing that people were doing wrong. I just knew that I was seeing the same mistakes over and over again. And then once I saw that, hey, this is called change management, I was like, this is it. This is what people need to add this component to their implementations to make them successful.
What's your favorite apps and why?
Are you talking about phone apps? Oh.
Yep. Any apps that you use more than others, perhaps?
I just started getting gas with an app, and that's pretty great. I live in an area where we get freezing temperatures, and I like not having to get my credit card out. So that's pretty cool. I'm excited to see the future. I'm excited to see where it goes. Like, I don't even have to tell it what pump I'm at or anything. It knows what pump I'm at and just charges me.
Wow. So what's the app called?
Well, it's through ExxonMobil. Yeah. So you just pull up to the thing. It knows what pump you're at. You pump your gas, get back in your car, and you leave. So that's pretty. Yeah, and I like the Macy's app. I don't know if you guys have Macy's all around the world, but Macy's is a huge department store, clothing store, and they have an app where you can tag something that you like and get price alerts. And I shop till I drop with my Macy's app.
Do you have any daily rituals that kind of set you on the right path for a successful day?
I get up every morning and drink a green shake after my workout. No, just kidding. That's what you wanted, huh? No, I do. My husband and I are doing kettlebell workouts now, so that's been really fun. But I read every morning for about a half hour, write in my journal. So that kind of sets me on the course for the day.
What recommendations do you have for people wanting a successful career in Dynamics?
Well, I've coached people a lot in having a career in Dynamics, and oftentimes it's people who are working at a company, they're using the software, and they say, I think this could be love. And I say, it's okay to love your software. It's okay. You're all right. But I do recommend that they consider getting a consulting gig or starting their solo. Some people do solo as well. But consulting in Dynamics allows you to see a lot of organizations and how they're using it. And so that's a great way. And the way that demand is right now, for the most part, if you know the software, you can probably get a job in consulting.
If you could redo anything in your career, what would it be?
Well, I wish I would have gotten a master's degree earlier. I really want a master's degree. When I look at the curriculum for like an MBA, I want to take those classes. I want to learn that stuff, but I should have done it way back when. And now it's always like, how do I have time for that? So I always tell younger people to go ahead and just do it. Just knock it out.
Who do you recommend as a guest for this podcast in the future?
Well, this podcast is all about readiness for partners, right? And building a business. So Suzanne Putt is the readiness person at Microsoft. I would recommend having her on here, talk about how she gets partners ready.
Excellent. I know her very well, so I will get in touch with her. Good suggestion. Gretchen, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Before you go, if people want to follow you online, where can they find you?
I'm pretty easy to find. I'm at CRM Gretchen on Twitter. And same with LinkedIn as well. So
this has been a Dynamics 365 podcast focusing on the ingredients of a successful Dynamics 365 practice. Your host was Business Solutions MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as NZ365 Guy. For more information on this interview, show notes, feedback and resources mentioned, or if you know someone who would be a great guest for future episodes, please go to nz365guy.com/podcast.